Hey everyone, last week I posted a video to this channel going through strategies when you're betting on American football, how you can analyze games, things to look for, whether you're betting on the money line, the handicaps, the totals, player props, any of those kind of things. Went through 10 different strategies. There are a stack more things to look at when I go through and analyze games, and at first, I was thinking right now I'll put out another video like that, share with you another 10 or so strategies. So each week you're leveling up your knowledge. But I thought right now, let's just use the first game for week 7 as a bit of an example of how to go through and analyze the game. So we're going to do a little mini preview of the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to go through how these teams match up and just to give you a bit of an idea of how I go through and analyze games. I won't go through like final bets or anything because there are still a few days out from this game. Everything I'm betting is in the NFL bet finders, which are right now until Sunday. So for the first 7 weeks of the season, you can join that for $19 a week. After Sunday, it goes up to the $33 a week. But let's jump into the game. So as you can see here, we've got the NFL bet finders, which just allows us to compare how these teams match up overall on the season, their overall offense, both passing, rushing, and then defense, both passing and rush defense. Now, this just gives you an overall indication on their performances and how they match up against each other and in relation to the league. But the thing with NFL is, depending on what the score line is, will largely determine their tactics. If teams have a big lead, they're going to run the ball more. If they're chasing points, they're going to throw the ball more. And this can alter their overall stats and be a little bit misleading. So you want to combine this with a stack of other things. But let's look through at this game. So we have Pittsburgh against Cincinnati. Pittsburgh are $1.38 favorites. They're laying 5.5 points, and the total is 42.5 points. First thing I want to mention, this is a divisional matchup. You can see both these sides are in the AFC North. Pittsburgh currently sit on top of the AFC North with a 4-1 record. Cincinnati in second with a 2-4 record. Baltimore, Cleveland, both with 1-5 records. So this game is really important. Just firstly, in this overall division, if Pittsburgh are to win here, which they are favored to do so, they'll go to 5-1. Cincinnati will go to 2-5. And then obviously Baltimore and Cleveland are still yet to play, but at best, they'll go to 2-5 as well. So Pittsburgh do have an opportunity here to establish a bit of a gap between them and the rest of the division, which is going to be important as following this game, they have the Green Bay Packers and Indianapolis Colts, both home games for them, but they're definitely tougher matchups than this one. So it's a really important game here for Pittsburgh. And obviously the Bengals looking to stop a 4-game losing streak. The other probably big thing to mention in this game, Aaron Rodgers is quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's turning 42 later this season. And then you also have Joe Flacco, who's now taken over as quarterback for the Bengals with the injury to Joe Burrow. He played last week against Green Bay. That was his first game for the Bengals, but he's already 40 this year. So we've got two quarterbacks in this game, both 40 plus. So it's going to be interesting how it plays out. It's something you don't really see all that often. Obviously, it's a position where you can play at an older age, but to have them both lining up against each other definitely is interesting. Firstly, looking at how these teams come into this game, the Steelers with their 4-1 record, they've won 3 straight. They beat Cleveland last week, 23-9. It is important to mention that was a tough spot for the Cleveland Browns. They were returning home from London the week prior and had to play on the road again going to Pittsburgh, whereas Pittsburgh had that home game and were off a bye prior to that. They had the overseas game the week before. So Pittsburgh were in a lot better of a situation going to that game and got the win as we expected. Then for the Bengals, they've lost 4 straight. They won their first 2 games of the season. Joe Burrow was injured in that second game. They were able to hold on and win. But since then, they've had a 4-game losing streak. This matchup here is the beginning of a 3-game homestand. They'll face Pittsburgh, then the New York Jets and Chicago Bears to wrap it up. Now, as I mentioned, last week was the first game for Joe Burrow as the starting quarterback for the Bengals. Cincinnati were kept scoreless in the first half in that game against Green Bay, but then in the second half played definitely better and at the end of the day made Green Bay beat them there. It wasn't just, a complete walk in the park for the Packers. They did have to make sure they ran in enough points to hold on to their margin. Prior to that, the Bengals played Detroit. They scored 24 points in that game, but it's a little bit misleading. They scored 21 of those 24 points against Detroit in the fourth quarter after Detroit had a really big lead. At home here, you definitely have to give the Bengals a chance of winning this game. As much as their form looks really awful, there's not a great deal of difference between the best and the worst in the NFL, and particularly when you've got a divisional matchup and a home divisional underdog here, which is what we have. I don't really like Pittsburgh are the most likely winner of the game, but I don't really want to be laying 5.5 points against them. I'd rather take Pittsburgh just to win the game or Cincinnati with an alternate handicap and get more points in their favor. The keys here for Cincinnati to win this game is firstly, and obviously, to get the run game going. They can't completely rely on Joe Flacco airing the ball out against this Pittsburgh defense. And we'll get to the reason why that is the case in a minute. But they need to get this run game going. Right now, Cincinnati ranked 30th in yards before contact and also 30th in yards after contact. So that's a really big concern. Chase Brown's not really having a great year so far for them. His season-long rush is just 13 yards. If you go back to last year, he pretty much had a rush of 13 or more yards in majority of games. So that's an area they really need to get rolling. And the reason why that is really important is Pittsburgh are very good at getting pressure onto the quarterback, and throughout the season, like Cincinnati so far have played three main quarterbacks. They played Burrow, Jake Browning, and now Flacco, and their quarterback has consistently been under pressure. And of those three, and if they can't run the ball through Chase Brown, then Flacco is going to be getting a lot of pressure here. The other thing is they're ranked 30th in yards per pass completion, which is definitely a surprising number considering they have Jamar Chase in the team. The other thing with their receiving, Mike Gesicki was injured last week, so that takes away their number one tight end. Do expect Noah Fant to get more targets in this game with that injury, especially considering Pittsburgh aren't great at defending tight ends. He played 30 snaps last week with that early injury to Gesicki, and he was only averaging 19 snaps per game in the 4 games prior to last week. He did have one of 26 back in their first game, but he had a season high last week. So he should get opportunities, so potentially be looking at his either yards or completions. Potentially you could look at just the number of receptions for him, as Cincinnati aren't a big yards team from that perspective. If you have a look through here at the stats, yards gained per pass attempt and per completion ranked 30th in the league from both of those. Yeah, you could also look at, no offense, number of receptions for this game. But at the end of the day, for Cincinnati, if they can't get the run game going, at least if just being moderate, then it's going to create issues for their passing game as well. And then Pittsburgh are more than likely going to win the game. So far this season, Pittsburgh have mostly played below average rushing teams. So in terms of their opposition, this is something you want to look at when you're analyzing teams' numbers, is have they been playing good teams or bad teams that have contributed to those numbers. So far, Pittsburgh, they've mostly played below average rushing sides, which Cincinnati are one of those and one of the worst. It's not much of a difference from what they've had so far. The one team that did have good success against Pittsburgh on the ground was the New York Jets back in week 1, but the Jets do have the combination of Justin Fields at quarterback and at the running back position there, dual attack, which the Bengals are not. Then for the keys for the Steelers to win this game, and obviously it's really important for them to extend their margin in top of the division with those 2 tough games coming up against the Packers and Colts. But last week against the Browns, now I mentioned that the Browns weren't in a great spot and everything like that, but Pittsburgh got their run game going early against Cleveland, which completely opened up the passing game for Aaron Rodgers. Cleveland, who they played last week, are the number 1 EPA per rush defense in the whole NFL. So the fact they had really good success against them sets up really well for them against the Bengals here, with this obviously being a significantly easier rushing matchup. Jaylen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell are the 2 running backs for the Steelers. If they get the ball going forward on the ground, that's Pittsburgh are going to be extremely hard to beat in this game, and I kind of think they're going to be able to do that, especially the way Pittsburgh played last week. They really got the connection going between Rodgers and DK Metcalf as well. They're a bit more balanced offensive side. We saw them last year. They were really run heavy and just panic passing, that kind of thing. That hasn't been as much of the case so far this season. So I think they're in good stead from that perspective. I think for this game, like, Cincinnati are most likely to hang around. They're not going to get completely blown out. Primetime game at home against a divisional rival, and also with Flacco, who has plenty of experience at quarterback leading the side. So I think Cincinnati can hang around. Don't think they're going to probably win the game. I think Pittsburgh can get over the line, most likely a close one. But what that'll do, that'll set up good yardage for Aaron Rodgers. So you could also look at his passing yards, which this season has been generally set really low. So that's been a good market to take advantage of. Also, or alternatively, you could look at the targets that he'll be throwing the ball to. Metcalf, that's his main receiver out of in terms of target share this season, which is pretty obvious, but also looking at his yards or receptions. And then the Steelers also give plenty of passes out to the running backs, so that's where Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell come into play once again. Across Metcalf, Warren, and Gainwell, those three account for over 50% of the passing target share this season for the Steelers. And with that in mind, you can definitely look at Jaylen Warren or Gainwell's rushing and receiving combined yards as options as well. All three of these players, Metcalf, Warren, and Gainwell, all have really good matchups against this Cincinnati side. And those are some ideas of how you can approach betting on this game. Hopefully you found this video insightful. If you want to follow all my bets right throughout the NFL season, go to the link in the description. And remember, right now until Sunday, you can get the NFL bet finders, which include all the research tools and everything I'm personally betting on the NFL, all for $19 per week before it goes up to the $33 a week of the normal price. Thanks guys for watching. Good luck with your NFL bets, and I'll see you in the next video.